My Lords, the Noble Lord, well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Noble Lord Earl Lytton and the Noble Lord Lord Young for explaining so very comprehensively what the issues are. And I think the question of whether the government has done enough is the key question. I don't intend to go into all the detail that's been got into. I've just got a couple of observations and I suppose a query, because I really don't know how to solve this crisis, and I'm not sure that I need to be convinced that these are the solutions that are being put forward. One of the things that's been very important is that so many categories of leaseholders were left out of previous arrangements, and that has caused immense pain and hardship and a sense of unfairness and so on, as has been described. And it's also the case that, as we've heard, in the popular imagination, this is all about solving the cladding crisis. But actually, the issue goes far beyond cladding and covers a wide range of remediated work. But also, we've ended up in a ridiculous situation of people in the wrong size blocks of flats still having to pay, but not being covered by protection and legislation. So I really appreciate all of these different difficult dilemmas. And like everybody, I hoped that the work that had been done in relation to the building safety legislation and that many of us were involved in would be a great source of relief and excitement for leaseholders. And it hasn't been. People are absolutely still in a very bad situation. So the government has to know that, because I know that the government wants to help, and therefore we should consider what our options are. But these are my slight concerns. A lot of the problems that leaseholders face today, or at the moment, are based on the way that people are behaving to remediated work that will need to be done because of the building safety legislation that we passed. Because there's an atmosphere of risk aversion that means that you cannot sell a leasehold flat now because of all the reasons we're given, because the lenders say, well, it's leasehold. There may be future remediation work to be done, and so on and so forth. It's become an absolute nightmare. And it seems ridiculous to me in the middle of a housing crisis that people are unable to sell their flats, not because they're too expensive, but because you cannot proceed. So there is a kind of glut in the flat market at the moment. People cannot move on, but also people can't buy flats that they urgently need to live in. So my concern is just to make sure that we don't always describe this through the issue of critical safety work. And even during the building safety discussions, I was concerned that we would become too risk averse, that actually the whole process of building and construction would be so mired in fear of what might happen, and this idea that fires are about to burst out at any moment, that it would become impossible to build anything with the stipulations that are put forward. And I do think that the broader problem of housing supply, of housing crisis, I'm terrified that what will happen is that we'll end up with nobody building anything anymore, because there will be too many risks in doing so because of the legislation that we've brought in. That's one problem. The other thing that I suppose I'm concerned about in relation to the polluter pays issue is that we end up destroying the construction industry. Now, I am more than aware of the fact that there are problems with parts of the construction industry. I don't doubt that there are, as used to be described, cowboy builders and so on and so forth. There are serious problems when I look at all the work that's been done by the leaseholder groups to expose the terrible circumstances that people are living in flats that are just not fit for purpose. I'm not suggesting in any way those things aren't true. But I'm also very wary of demonising the construction industry to such an extent and destroying it effectively at a very time when I actually want them to be hyperactively building houses left all over the place to solve the problem of the fact that we have homelessness, that people haven't got anywhere to live, there's an affordability crisis and so on. So maybe the Noble Lords could just answer how we deal with that. One of the things that is very clear is so that we're not just simply focusing on the construction industry as though they are the bad guys or solely the bad guys, is I am very frustrated about the fact that the banks are actually embroiled in holding things up. The banks just won't lend to people who want to buy leasehold properties at the moment. That's a real problem, it seems to me. So maybe, is there something we need to look at there? And it's already been discussed, and I've raised this in contributions in the past. The role of the insurance industry has also been hugely problematic in terms of the cost of insurance. Now, that all trickles down, and it ends up being that the leaseholders are the people who suffer in that way. But as I say, I'm just very nervous of just making our focus on the construction industry. The thing about the polluter pay model is, I suppose, that I am concerned about who gets labelled as the polluter. And I've just walked past the demonstration in which the polluter, in that instance, apparently is the fossil fuel industry or the energy industry or anyone who holds, people who create cars. They say the polluter should pay for all the problems in society. And I'm just wary that that is oversimplistic as a solution. However, to the government and to the minister, I would say saying the status quo ante is sufficient is actually a betrayal of the promises the government made to leaseholders last year, in the fact that many of us made to leaseholders last year.
My Lords, I have an amendment in this